You know what? I'm going to go out there. I'm going to say it. I think the Detroit Lions got robbed. And I don't think they're the only ones. I think every year there are one or two teams that absolutely get robbed who make the playoffs, and they have to deal with losing their coaches while they're playing through the playoffs. Now, in this video, we're going to talk about two things. We're going to talk about how they got robbed, but then we're going to talk about how it doesn't matter and how they've already moved on from it and how they've just had a great hire. Like, they just had a fantastic hire. And we're in this time of year where I can make 2, 3, 4 videos a day. Just don't have time to do it. You got a full-time job. So in this video, we're going to cover multiple things, including the Lions' new defensive line hire, who many of us probably don't know who he is. So we're going to talk about who he is a little bit. But the one that I want to talk about first, the thing I want to talk about first is something that Bill Belichick had to say. He said this. He said former Patriots head coach Bill Belichick says he dislikes playoff coaches interviewing for losing teams while the team is still in contention. Belichick says it provides a big distraction. All right? I don't understand how we can act like it's not. Like, look, I understand multiple teams have to deal with it. I do. I think about and I look at what's happening with Liam Cohen and the Bucs and like all that craziness over there. Look, it's really simple. We have made a mistake, and I've been talking about this before the playoffs started for the Lions, but both in college football and pro football. In college football, don't open the portal until after the college football playoff. It's unfair to the teams in the college football playoff. So they don't get rewarded for being the best. That doesn't make sense. Same with coaches. NFL has done such a good job at managing the calendar. There's something all year, right? Let's think about it. The season starts, you have in August, you have training camp, and then preseason, and then you get into September through January, you have the regular season. Then January and February, you have the playoffs and the Super Bowl. Then in March, you have free agency. Then in April, you have the draft. And then in May and June, you have OTAs, rookie mini camp. In July, everybody goes away. There's 1 month that the NFL doesn't have the calendar. 1 month. And the other time that the NFL doesn't really have the calendar is this time between the Super Bowl, which happens early February, like February 10th, somewhere around there, and then you have free agency that starts in March. That's your time for coaches. That's what makes sense. And I don't understand why the NFL isn't doing this. I think they need to look into it. I really do. And I think it's interesting that it hasn't been noticed until now. I think it was just 2 years ago this happened to the Philadelphia Eagles. They got poached last year. They struggled. Now they've regained their composure and they're back and they are in the NFC Championship game. So, yeah, I don't think it's a great look. But the Detroit Lions have already started making moves. One of the losses that they had that was in this is defensive lines coach. I guess we lost both coordinators. We know that. But don't forget about Williams, our defensive line coach, who we brought over from the Titans, I believe it was last year, regarded as the best defensive line coach in the NFL, and he's getting a shot to be a defensive coordinator. He's going to go be a D coordinator for Vrabel with the Patriots. Good for him. What an awesome fit, right? But what about us? We go out and get this guy named Casey Rogers. All right, Casey Rogers, this is 2019 through 2024. This is what the Bucs defense ranked in run defense. First, third, fifth, fourth, fifth. I'll take that. And the Lions defense was right up there recently, so we know we can stop the run. A good defensive line coach, those are the things that you can absolutely look to. You can absolutely look to those things. I was looking about this, too. You want to know a little bit more about him? All right. Al Karsten came out here on Twitter. By the way, follow us on Twitter, right? And he said Casey Rogers coached with Dan Campbell in Miami from 10 to 14. He coached defensive tackle / D-line with Dallas while Campbell was a tight end in 03 to 05. spent the last 22 years as an NFL D-line coach or D coordinator. He was the Jets defensive coordinator for 4 years. All right? Some of the best D linemen he's coached: Leroy Glover, DeMarcus Ware, Cameron Wake, Olivier Vernon, Leonard Williams, Snacks Harrison, right? Sheldon Richardson, Vita Vea, Shaquille Barrett, Kalijah Cansey, Yaya Diaby. Like, this is a guy who has had some pretty good defensive linemen, don't get me wrong, but has consistently put out a great defensive line front. This is what we need. I think the other thing that I see is where he's been, there hasn't been a ton of injuries. Some of it's freak stuff, and I understand that. But proper technique, being in the right place at the right time, reading what the offensive line is doing well. You don't put your body in compromised positions. All right? That is some of it too. I want coaches, not just training staffs, that can help these players not get injured. All right? I don't want to see that. So, he absolutely does a good job, but he's a guy who's had defensive coordinator experience. I wouldn't be shocked if this is a guy that we're bringing in to coach the defensive line, and then all of a sudden we're like, you know what? He's going to be our defensive coordinator in the future. It could happen. It absolutely could happen. And Dan Campbell is already showing he has the ability to go out and get what everybody else is wanting. And by the way, Adam Schefter has reported everybody, quote, in the NFL is looking to mimic Dan Campbell's success with the Lions. People are trying to do what he does. You have to understand something. Dan Campbell isn't just a rah-rah type of coach where he's getting excited about things. Dan Campbell also is a good X's and O's guy. You can't have the success he has by just doing one thing. You have to be solid on it. And Dan Campbell is. That's why this offense has been so great. It's not just Ben Johnson. It's not. He's heavily involved in that. In fact, he's more heavily involved in the offense than he is on the defense. And you saw the offense outperform the defense every year he's been a coach here. So what he needs to do is he needs to go get great defensive minds out there. Then the culture that he sets will allow the defense to have success going forward. I absolutely think Casey Rogers is a home run hire to coming off the Williams departure. It's fantastic. Now the question is who's going to be the guy to call this defense? It's very, very interesting. It's very, very interesting. And I think the other question is, Casey Rogers actually had a couple of defensive coordinator interviews. He did. All right? He's been the Tampa Bay Buccaneers run game coordinator and defensive line coach. So it's very interesting because he's taking a lateral move. All right? This isn't the first time we've seen this done when it comes to the Detroit Lions. That's why I'm wondering if there's a little bit more there. I'm wondering if there's a little bit more there. I'm sure he'll be the run game coordinator, but I'm wondering if there's more because why just take a lateral move? Scotty Montgomery did this when he came over from the Indianapolis Colts. He took what seemingly was a lateral move. And so you have to understand, it's Dan Campbell. It has to be Dan Campbell. So while the NFL and while the Lions were in a tough spot that we knew they were going to be in this year, I firmly believe Dan Campbell will overcome it. And if you're worried about who's he going to get as coaches, what are they going to be? I have a question for you. Before Detroit, who were Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn? Who were they? Aaron Glenn is a man who makes his own stuff. I understand that. He's a great leader of men. Aaron Glenn is phenomenal. Who is Ben Johnson? What was he? Tight ends coach, offensive quality control coach. He was buried on the staff under Pat Patricia, a dying coaching tree. And Dan Campbell's like, no, you're sticking with me. And they had coached together. Dan Campbell helped make these men who they are. He will do that with the next crop of coaches. But you still have a bunch of coaches that are here. They're going to do the exact same thing. I'm really excited to see what happens. There you go. All right. Wanted to talk about it. See you on the next one. Lots of news coming. Make sure you're watching our videos each and every day. See ya.